Welcome, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're talking to an incredible woman of God who has written and published several books. She is an award-winning author, national speaker, and she helps women find strength for the soul. Her name is Cindi McMenamin, all the way from Southern California. We welcome Cindi back to the OPT Network. Cindi, good morning and welcome back.
Good morning. It's good to be with you.
So, Cindi, nearly 35 years of ministering to women and inspiring those women. But on that journey, you have written several best-selling books. Let's talk about moving out of the writing piece and helping others to realize their dream. When did you know that that was something that you were called to do?
Well, I've been in those 35 years of ministry that I've had. I've been discipling women just constantly, a Bible teacher, sitting down with women to just kind of help them grow. So when I started writing books, in addition to discipling women, I also found myself sitting down across the table from somebody who wanted to write. So for about the past 20 years, as I've been writing and publishing books, I've also been kind of guiding people along, helping them do it. And then about 2 years ago, I got certified as a writing and speaking coach and found that I absolutely love helping others write a book that God has put on their heart, just as much as, if not more than writing my own books. After writing 17 books, sometimes I'm like, okay, what else do I need to say? And I clearly knew the day when God had said, now I want you to start helping others write the book that I put on their heart. And it's been a wonderful experience to see people who have a wonderful idea and great things to say, but they just don't know where to start. And so I've been able to kind of guide them through that. And it's been very fulfilling too. I've enjoyed it.
And I think that, and you and I were talking off air, there are very few people that I have met on this journey that didn't say, I need to write a book, or people say I should write a book. What do you say to those people? Because almost everybody thinks that they should write a book.
When somebody says, oh, you should write a book, that isn't necessarily the indication that you should. The person who said that is probably somebody you're well acquainted with, who loves you and cares about you, and they've heard your story and they would read it. To write a book, to put the effort in, it takes time and commitment and hard work and often investment in a writing coach and then eventually a marketing coach and things like that. To do that, you want to write something that's going to impact more than just your family and friends who love you, but something that might appeal to a lot of people out there who can relate to it. So there needs to be more than just somebody saying you should write a book. There needs to be encapsulating on the real benefit and reward that's going to come out of that book for each person who's going to pick it up and read it.
And so we were talking about the competition and how so many people are self-publishing. But a lot of people have the idea that if they write a book or when they write a book, that it is going to be very lucrative for them monetarily. And you say, what about that?
Well, like right now, 70% of all book sales happen on Amazon. And so somebody thinks, if I publish it and I put it on Amazon, I'm going to start making money. There's a new book published on Amazon, a new book listed on Amazon every 5 minutes. There are in excess of 5 million books out there. Just because a book is published and available online does not mean people will find it. So I usually encourage writers, start building your audience now. Know specifically who you are writing to, because no book is for everyone. Get to know that audience, where that audience is, write to them, and then have a marketing plan once that book is available, or no one will ever notice it or find it.
Wow. So do writers that are being born right now, do they need to have some sort of platform before they even put the book out there, some sort of following?
Any traditional royalties paying publisher will require that you have a platform, and many times a large one, because it is a huge financial risk to publish a book. There's costs involved. Even if you self-publish a book and you think, well, it's free to publish on Amazon, it is a real good idea to at least have a podcast, a blog, a newsletter, something, so that you can even tell that audience that's already out there, hey, the book is available. To just shoot in the dark and put it out there and hope people that are going to notice it is a little unrealistic. But there are ways to begin to build that platform, to begin to collect that audience as you're writing. I think the more we have that audience and communicate with that audience and get feedback from that audience, the better that book will be, because we know the people we're writing to, in a sense. We know what they need, what they struggle with, what's going to cause them to part with the $12 to $15 to buy that book to meet that need that they have. And I'm talking specifically about nonfiction too, because that's what I'm familiar with.
Sure. And so for you, Cindi, when did you find real success in writing or as a writer?
Well, my second book, Through a God Thing, my book, When Women Walk Alone, came out in 2000. Again, it was my second book from Harvest House Publishers. And that one was the breakout book. That one now has sold about 150,000 copies over the last 20 years. So it took a while, but it started out big, and it's been through a couple different editions. And the first book, 20 years ago, sold about 10,000 the first year at that time. My publisher said, not great, but not bad either. Today, that is phenomenal if a first-time book sells 10,000 copies in a year.
Wow.
Absolutely phenomenal, because the average book sells less than 100 copies over the lifetime of its publication. That's how many books that are out there that are just not selling at all.
Less than 100?
Less than 100 copies. And that's considering all the books that are out there, self-published, traditionally published. So if you're hoping to sell at least 200 or 300 copies of your book, you got to work for that. If your book ends up selling 1,000 copies, over a couple years in today's competition, that's good, but it's not enough to rely on as a full-time job, certainly.
So after you looked at the success of that book in 2000, what was the success predicated on?
Okay, so When Women Walk Alone came out in 2002. So it was a topic, again, When Women Walk Alone, Finding Strength and Hope Through the Seasons of Life. The title resonated. The cover resonated. That book didn't sell so much in Christian bookstores. It's the majority of that book, of the copies of that book, sold off of inspirational book racks in Costco and Walmart and gas stations and airports, meaning it was an impulse buy. Somebody saw a title, it resonated. The book also, I interviewed many different women who felt alone in all different seasons of life. You can be married and still feel alone. You can be single, divorced, widowed, a career woman, very successful, still feel alone. And so I interviewed lots of women and really tailored that book to meet a felt need. That and a whole lot of God, I think. I had a publisher that sent me out on a media tour. They said, if it's a good book, we give you every opportunity to get in front of TV and radio at that time. And if it's a good book, we do what we can to give it wings. And if it's a good book, it will fly, they said. And then, of course, after the success of that book, Harvest House continued to give me more contracts to write more. The other ones never did as well as that one, but did pretty well, averaging between 10 and 20,000 copies, and all still in print. So each book kind of builds on the other. So it's good to have a good first book, so somebody wants to read something else from that writer. And I've also done a lot of speaking, a lot of radio interviews. I think you interviewed me for at least 4 or 5 of my books.
Absolutely, I did. Absolutely, I did. And became a follower. And back in 2000 and 2002, was there a huge platform on social media that helped to catapult? Because there was relatively
no social media.
Right.
In 2002, I barely had a web. It was just a do-it-yourself GoDaddy website. I did not have an email mailing list, which is huge now. Every publisher says, we want to see between 5,000 and 10,000 emails addresses on your list before we'll consider giving you a book. I mean, it's phenomenal what they're asking for now in terms of platform. we weren't using the word platform back in 2002.
That's true.
So, things lined up. The competition wasn't nearly what it is now. Most people were buying books in bookstores rather than on Amazon. So the industry has changed quite a bit. But I found out very soon as I began to speak, I need to, collect these email addresses from readers and listeners when I spoke, to continue to keep in touch with them, to let them know what other books are out, to continue to send out devotionals and things that will help them in their daily life and developing that relationship with my audience.
Absolutely. Let's take a break here, but when we come back, we'll have more of what Cindi is doing to inspire women to live their dreams. Stay on point. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is no stranger to the OPT Network. Cindi and I have been talking probably since early 2000s. Cindi McMenamin is our guest this morning. She's an award-winning author and a national speaker. But more than that, I think our connection, Cindi, was really on the level of us empowering women to begin to birth their dreams, to figure out what it is that they want to do and go after it. And you're one of those people that have written several books that really just speak to the heart of women. And one of the things that, as we talk about your work in coaching, a lot of women and men too, but especially women, are pivoting after COVID and trying to find their niche. There are a lot of women that want to speak on a national level, maybe don't have a book or don't have a platform. What do you say to those women that do have a message to share?
I think the time is better now than it ever has been to be able to get that message out. There are lots of people that are starting podcasts online, sometimes just like a Facebook Live right there on Facebook. Because of tech, we have that ability. I'm working with a writer now who's going to be writing a book to help couples because she started kind of a podcast online Bible study with several women who were frustrated in their marriage. And these are women in her culture. And she began to see that there was something very specific that they were coming to her for. And so she has this ministry that just evolved. I'm working with another writer who, again, now in the COVID era is beginning to get online to counsel, encourage, help women individually and in group meetings on Zoom. And she says, I don't know what to do. It's just growing. And I said, well, let's just start, getting your message into a format so you can offer resources to these people you're helping as well. So the book industry is growing right now. Mm-hmm. People are looking for information. They're looking for help. They're looking for encouragement. So if you're an encourager and you've got a message that's helping people, by all means, tap into those ways to get that message out. And as you do that, you're also test marketing it for feedback to see, okay, are people really resonating with this? Mm-hmm. Maybe this is a book. Maybe this is a series of articles that I should be getting online out there. Maybe this is a full-blown podcast that I can do. Maybe I do need to hit the road when it's time to go out and do seminars or conferences on this topic.
And how does that work with people that are wanting to put together conferences and seminars or be a part of those seminars that really empower other women?
There are a lot of online conferences happening now, which can get a much bigger attendance because people don't have to fly. They can just do it right there. I'm in a network called womenspeakers.com, and it's with Marnie Swedberg, and she works with empowering women and training them, doing all sorts of training for speakers, but also a booking agency for minimal cost. You can, be a part of that website so people can know that you speak. And so it's something that can happen. Again, when women grab hold of their passion, what they truly care about, combine that with their experience, what they're knowledgeable about, and then begin to look into the opportunities and venues to get that message out and commit that to God, I see an amazing thing happen. I see it end up taking off. God is so faithful that when it's time,
Mm-hmm.
he just launches us into ministry. So I always applaud women when they've got that idea, get online, get the research, get a coach, learn the industry of what you're doing, and then trust God that when the timing is right, he
I
will
love
launch
that.
you out there.
I love that. And that leads me to the next thing, getting a coach. A lot of people are really reluctant about getting a coach, don't know if they can afford a coach, don't know, which coach is going to be best for them. Let's talk about the idea of getting a coach and what that means.
Okay. The whole the whole terminology of a coach is based on, if you think of like those stage coaches or a vehicle, a coach is somebody who comes alongside you and helps you get from where you are to where you want to be.
Mm.
So when I coach others, the true essence of coaching is the client sets the agenda. I have on my website a do we fit questionnaire, and then I give a complimentary half-hour session with somebody if I, want to see if maybe we can work together. And the true essence of coaching is me asking them some questions, getting them to realize different things. I give them paperwork based on my book, When a Woman Discovers Her Dream, I think that you were referring to earlier, to find out what their passion is, what they're good at, what are their spiritual gifts, what are the wounds in life that God has used to maybe develop them and give them a ministry to others. And we kind of put that all together to find out, what is your unique message? What is it that only you can say, that you need to be saying, that nobody else can say the way you can? And then we look at how the best venue for that. Is it writing? Is it speaking? Is it a combination of those things? One woman I worked with simply wanted to start writing articles, and she's writing for all sorts of online publications now because she had a passion and she had an ability to communicate it well. She just didn't know where to get that out.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what a lot of people's issues are. They have that gift, but they don't know how to tap in. And then once you tap in, how does it become known? As like you talked about the books, there's so many writers out there. There's so many books out there. There's so many podcasts. There's so many of everything that getting your product or your service to be saturated into a market so that you can build a tribe is really the most challenging thing, isn't it?
Yes. And so I work with some on platform building and then offer them a lot of resources where they can get even more stuff, free stuff online, and experts in that area. One of the things I help them tap into is, what is their unique? Yeah, how can they find their niche in the market? There's a lot of people that want to talk about identity in Christ. There's a lot of people that want to talk about how to grow through your trials. But what is unique about a person's story and experiences and insights that we can hone in on and then develop? And maybe that becomes their branding, and that becomes something specific that other people can go to them for. What is that one area where they might eventually be considered an expert? There's, again, a lot of resources out there, but we are each uniquely designed. And I think when we tap into what I call that dream that God has placed on our heart, that uniqueness about us, when we tap into that, I think we find our uniqueness, our angle, our branding, our message, our platform.
Powerful. Let's take a break here. When we come back, I want to talk about being able to trust God in the midst of being given that thing that God has given you to do, and you don't know how it's going to happen, but how do you hold on, persevere, and trust the process? Cindi McMenamin is our guest this morning. Stay on point. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. If you've watched the show at all, you know how much we love to empower women and people, but women especially. And as this month is Women's History Month, no better person to inspire the soul of women than Cindi McMenamin. She's written, numerous books. She has been in ministry for almost 4 decades, and she really speaks to the heart and soul of women, Cindi. And I said in the last segment, there's so many women that have been called to do great things. And I believe that when God calls you to do a thing, it's so gargantuan that you don't even know how it's going to happen. You don't know, the logistics, because scripture says, I show you the end from the beginning. And so we don't ever really know what's in the middle. And so how do you help women to persevere, to stand, and to keep doing the work when you just don't know how it's going to happen?
That's the whole reason I wrote my book, When a Woman Discovers Her Dream, where I talk about different things like the assault that comes in our minds. Who am I to do this?
Right.
Why should I be somebody to write a book or start a ministry or do this or that? And yet knowing the right voice to listen to when God puts that dream in our heart, and he's the one that won't let it die. And he's the one that just nags at the back of our head at night. We can't let go of that dream. That's something he doesn't want us to let go of. That's something he wants us to continue to pursue and trust him with. So I've got a chapter in there on how to trust him and how to become a big dream believer and things like that. But let me just share with you something that really encouraged me right when I was about to just give up on the whole writing thing.
Wow.
Hear from a publisher and I'm like, maybe this just isn't for me.
Okay.
And God was always faithful, and he always brought something just before I lost hope, just something more to keep me going. And it was Psalm 18, verses 28 and 29 that says, "You, Lord, keep my lamp burning." In other words, he's the one that keeps that passion for the dream alive. My God turns my darkness into light. When I didn't know what to do, it's like he would open another door there. With your help, I can advance against a troop. And with my God, I can scale a wall. And I began to see the troop of fears that I needed God's help to advance against. I began to see the wall of finances or the wall of time or the wall of doubt that I needed God's help to scale. And anything that we commit to him, God will then organize the timing, those divine appointments, all of those little details that we couldn't have done ourselves. So part of it is trusting the process as we lay it out before him and say, okay, this is what I want to do, God. Now I'm going to start doing my homework. Open a door or close a door. If this isn't for me, help me to do something else. Sometimes we start out too small. We think it's only going to be this, and God expands it. Sometimes we're like, I'm going to do this huge thing, and God says, start small. As you are faithful in a little, I will give you more. The next verse in there says, as for God, his way is perfect. So, trusting that process, that everything we go through, every little delay or obstacle, God is going to use to refine me and make me ready for what he has for me. I even outlined a couple real practical things in When a Woman Discovers Her Dream. I called it my 3D approach. And the first one was direction. Pray for direction. God, what is it you want me to do?
Right.
Then pray for discipline. Okay, now that I know, God, help me to just do it. And then pray for determination to not give up, to just keep going on to the next step. I'm the kind of person that had to write out the goals and weekly write out certain things that I could do so I could cross them off the list and know I'm making progress, because sometimes it feels like there's not progress.
Right. And I tell people this all the time. Sometimes it feels like nothing is happening, but when you know that you're called to do a thing by God, you know that nothing is without purpose.
Right.
It's all about preparation. And, we can get discouraged in that when we don't see it moving, when we don't see our platforms building the way that we had hoped. And so with you, before you made that breakthrough, I know that there were times where you were saying, like most people, who am I to do this? Why would anybody listen to me? How do you cross those hurdles to stay in the game?
I think a whole lot of it, I mentioned surrender, but is really inviting God into that process where we begin to ask him, God, I want this to look like what you want it to look like more than what I want to look like. Because sometimes we get in there and we start running ahead of the process and we get frustrated that God didn't do what we thought he had told us. I've heard from so many, speakers and writers who said, somebody spoke a word over me and said that, I'm going to be speaking to millions and I'm going to have this huge platform. And why isn't God doing it? And sometimes we just need to say, okay, God, show me what this looks like in your way. Show me the little steps of obedience you need me to take. When I took a long walk outside my house and up a hill about 20 years ago, I was really discouraged. I got another rejection slip in the mail from a publisher based on a proposal that I didn't even know how to write at that time. And my question was, God, what makes me, why would anybody want to even read anything that I would have to write? What can make me a woman of God that would have something to say? And he impressed upon my heart two things: get to know my word and spend time with me in prayer. And those two things made all the difference, Carlette. It's like when I began to do that, he began to lay on my heart certain issues to write about. He gave me opportunities to begin to teach others as I was in the word and began to understand it more. Those lessons turned into chapters in a book eventually. Just spending that time with God and wanting to do things his way and not my way. Again, God did not waste that time. That was refining time. The first book I believed I was supposed to write, and I really never even prayed about it. I just thought, God brought me a wonderful husband. My first book is going to be called Pathway to a Prince. So I started writing my story of how I found what I believe was the perfect man. And hopefully other people would follow my example and find their perfect man. That was not the book God had me write.
Wow.
I began to spend time with him. I also wanted to write that book in my first 4 years of marriage, because everybody's like in the perfect marriage, right? They've all found their first 4 years. Then I had a baby, quit my career job as a reporter. Things began to change, and God had me learn that he ultimately is my prince. He's the one who disappoint. He's the only one who can satisfy. And my first book became not Pathway to a Prince, but it was called Heart Hunger: Letting God Meet Your Emotional Needs. As he took me through some learning experiences and then helped me disciple others with why they were so frustrated in their marriage or why they were so needy and clingy and nothing satisfies, sharing with them what God taught me, I realized that's the book. It's how God is the only one that satisfies. And when we spend that time in his word and in prayer, he can then put his plans on our heart, put his idea of a book, his title for us. And many times what started out as a desire in our heart, God refines that and shapes it, turns it into what he wants it to be. And that's when we get his endorsement on it. That's when he causes it to take off, because ultimately it's his dream for us, not just our dream for ourselves.
That's powerful. Powerful. That's powerful. Let's take a break here, but we'll be back with more right after this. Our guest this morning is Cindi McMenamin, and she's an award-winning author and national speaker. She's been in ministry for almost 4 decades, and she really speaks to the heart and soul of women. And so as we have been in this shutdown, and I know in Southern California, it's a lot different. How has your business changed? How have people reached out to you to try to make this pivot?
Last April, I guess it was March, April, when we had that lockdown, I heard from more and more people, just prospective coaching clients than I ever had before, because people were suddenly at home. They had time to write, or they were suddenly laid off. And again, they were in that transition of, what do I do now? And it's been wonderful to help some of them tap into maybe something they've always wanted to do, but they didn't have time. I'm working with one young mom back east who has had an idea on her heart for years, and now it's just blooming and developing. Whenever God closes a door, I truly believe that when we remain surrendered to him, he will open another one. There are a lot of yucky things that happened this last year. My daughter lost her career job with Disney during the layoff of 30,000 employees here, because that park hasn't reopened yet. But God has also done some amazing things through that in her spiritually, and giving her opportunities she wouldn't have had before. I've seen that as well. God began to lead me into coaching, knowing this time would come, so that maybe I could be available to some of those people who are going to be working through that. But anytime we're out of our comfort zone, anytime there's change, delays, setback, obstacles, that is a golden opportunity to allow God to do some refining in us. More of the same never means change. But as we begin to, sometimes we're forced into different circumstances. As we remain open to God and say, God, show me what you want me to see during this time. Help me to be open to new things that I didn't see before. God, I want to grow. I want to know you more during this time. And I want to know your heart. Amazing things can happen. I can't even begin to go into all the stories of what has happened this last year from people who kind of thought life was over when this pandemic happened, or they lost their job, or things look different. They can't be around people. They got to do everything on the computer,
right.
High learning. And yet the opportunities as they were open, and sometimes change is scary, but growth always means change. Change doesn't always mean growth if we're resistant to it, if we back out of it. But if we truly want things to go differently and better, there's a growing process through that. That's how we can change. So I encourage your listeners to grab hold of those opportunities. If God's changing things up, be open to the adventure. You know, the word Advent in adventure means God's coming. And my husband had shared with me once, the whole concept of adventure is when God shows up and does something amazing in our lives.
So Cindi, did you wonder about coaching, and if it would be successful, and especially when the pandemic happened, had that business taken off for you?
Since I had already been kind of coaching people in my free time, for free for the last 15 years, I knew it was something I could do. I saw that it was something that was getting people results. As my speaking began to slow down a little bit, the opportunity came to me about 2 years ago. And again, something I prayed about, the certification program to coach was kind of expensive. I just prayed and said, God, if this is something you want, supply the finances and help my husband to be like-minded. And as soon as I told him, he said, that sounds like something very natural for you. Something, you disciple women, you're an encourager, you've got the expertise, do it. And many times when you lay out those fleeces and there's affirmation and affirmation and affirmation, that lets you know, okay, I need to keep taking these steps. There was an initial layout of money, but God continued to provide those clients. God continued to provide the business. And during COVID, there wasn't that fear. I think part of it is because crosswalk.com had assigned me to write certain articles like 10 ways to know God is in charge of the coronavirus.
Wow.
And 7 ways we can maintain hope during a pandemic. And writing those was also my own therapy, my own spiritual lifeline, because I had to live that and research that and in order to teach that. So I think being aware of, again, surrendering, praying, but then looking for the affirmation that God will send through conversations with other people. Again, there might be a setback here or there. That doesn't mean throw it away.
Right.
That sometimes a detour. God will close the door here to reroute you somewhere else so you stay on track.
What have you learned the most, Cindi, since you have been working with so many people that that you're encouraging to walk out their purpose? What have you learned on this journey?
I've learned, first of all, not to rely on my own strength. There's sometimes before I get into a coaching call where I will say, Lord, I don't know what to say to this client. I need to know how to encourage them with your words. I need to know how to steer them in your agenda. Now I am fearful to do it in my own strength. It's got to be laid out before him. And it's really neat during that 1 hour coaching call with a client to see how God takes that in his agenda. So by the end of the call, that writer is excited about going in a direction that I didn't even know about, but we discovered it as we began to talk, as I began to ask her questions, as she began to really get passionate about something. I think I've also learned again, to be open to things looking the way God wants them to instead of the way I want them to. I'm a person that likes to know what's going on and likes to be in control if I can, but I've learned God's way, his direction, his timing, the speed of how he does things is always so much better than mine. And now I realize I owe that to my clients, to really let the Holy Spirit be the guide, the ultimate coach, and then try to tune into him as well as the person I'm coaching so that we can follow his agenda and teach them to do that. I'm always amazed at what he can do. He's a much better coach than I am.
That's awesome. You just allow him to work through you. So Cindi, before we've got to let you go, it's just no matter how often or how little we talk, it's just always awe-inspiring. And I want to thank you for taking the time to share your heart and your mission with our listeners and viewers. Tell people how they can connect not only with the plethora of books that you've written, but somebody who's looking for a coach and they say, this is that moment. This conversation was for me.
Okay, well, my website is strengthforthesoul.com, and I do have a contact page there, but also if you click on coaching, I have a Do We Fit questionnaire. I do respond to everybody who contacts me, and in that Do We Fit, tell me a little bit about what's on your heart, what your project might be. If it sounds like something where we might be able to work together, I go ahead and give you a complimentary half-hour call where we can talk by phone or by Zoom to see if your project is something that coaching can help you get where you need to be. I only work with U.S. residents, but if you are outside the U.S., I can connect you with a coach who can work with you internationally.
That's awesome. Cindi, thank you so much. May God continue to bless the work of your hands.
Thank you, Carlette. It's been great talking with you.
Same here. Cindi McMenamin was our guest this morning. Stay on point, everybody. We're back right after this.